Hello everyone and welcome. Yes, my name is Arrowfire and welcome back to another ranking video. I've actually got to think of a name for these type of videos. Maybe I'll do some more of them, maybe I won't. Now with all of the films released and nothing coming up yet, nothing in the pipeline, I want to go through all of my Transformers films for a tier ranking list. Now, I have held off doing this video until Transformers 1 has been out in the UK and in the majority of Europe as well. As such, with it being released in Europe, the UK, it's also going to be on streaming services very soon. A little too soon if you ask me, but whatever. Now that that film is out, I'm going to go through the ranking of all of the Transformers films. Now, yes, there might be a film of Transformers Prime that is classed as a feature-length episode or a film. I am just going to go with cinematic releases in theatres, in cinemas, typical films made as budgeted films, not elongated episodes. This is a pre-assembled list that I've picked up, so credit to the person who has created it, and I'll put their name in the description of the video. Let us start in release order. Let's go back to 1986 for Transformers the movie. The only animated film in terms of drawing, maybe not, but it's in terms of cartoon drawing, this is what we got at the cinema, and it's what a lot of us do remember. I mean, it's a brilliant film. It is an 80-minute toy commercial, let's call it for what it is, but it's brilliant in terms of so many iconic moments. But notwithstanding Optimus Prime's death being something that I and many other children of my age just bawled my eyes out over. But it is a pinnacle film. The introduction of Unicron, the introduction of new characters, the cleansing of old characters, some amazing voice actors, some really high profile names, the last performance of Orson Welles before his untimely demise, and what is a staple to this day 40 years later, or nearly 40 years later, and how we're still getting toys today representing these designs from 40 years ago. It's so iconic, and people will say it is the pinnacle of the film. I do love the film. It's going to go straight in S tier because that's where it belongs. I will say, as much as I like the film, it is very much with nostalgia being driven. It is a big childhood wonder that we carry on to this day. As good a film as it is a way to sell a new way of toys. Let's call it for what it is. Let's be realistic about it. It's a way of introducing Ultra Magnus, Rodimus Prime, Galvatron, Cyclonus and others. And that's really what its design was. And sadly, it bombed at the box office, so it was by no means a financial success, but it is a success with the fans. And then there was this long dormant stage, and Transformers went through a bit of a downward turn, going into Generation 2, revitalised through Beast Wars, and then went a bit quiet again. And it wasn't until 2007 that we got the first of the live-action movies. And this was quite exciting for the time. I think looking back on it, we realise now what a game changer this was. And we have said it, even as older fans, that this gave Transformers a new lease of life, like Beast Wars did, but to a much higher degree. That really, in the mid-2000s, or early turn of the 2000s, Transformers wasn't really going anywhere. And the cinema releases, the Michael Bay films, even though people hate on them, there is a real propulsion into a new fandom, and you have a new generation of fans to follow it. 2007 film, a very good film. It's not perfect, but it is an enjoyable film. It's a good story. It has its good moments. It certainly has a good fight scene at the end of it. For me, I am going to put that in A tier. It was daring, it was new, and we got a lot of similarities, even if people were saying this isn't my Optimus Prime, it doesn't look anything like it. But seeing Prime in that cool truck, seeing a Starscream, seeing the likes of Bone Crusher and Bruce and Blackout, there's some really introducing new characters, big screen presence. Ironhide even looks really cool in it, and it paved the way for something new. It felt exciting. That then goes on into Revenge of the Fallen, and I was very excited when this came out. But I will say this did leave me wanting a bit more. Again, it had its good moments. I felt this is where the human side of the Transformers films went a bit too much. We were focusing a lot on Sam, and we were focusing a lot of the human elements and how they were going to be a big part of it. And That's not what I wanted to see. I also wasn't a fan of the Fallen as a prime or any kind of boss of Megatron. That never sat well with me. I never felt that Megatron should have a boss. He belongs to nobody, was the line. And if you're going to have him have a master, it felt like a bit of a misstep for me. But again, it had some good moments. As I say, the introduction of Devastator, or whatever the hell they called it, Constructicon, was the combiner, is a very nice moment. And we have Prime merging with Jetfire. The introduction of Jetfire was fairly cool. And we see the Matrix in the live action movie for the first time. So by no means a terrible film. I just wasn't a fan, particularly of the Fallen as a character. For me, I am going to put that in B tier. It was fine, not necessarily living up to its predecessor though. And then we come on to Dark of the Moon. I did like it. I enjoyed it more than Revenge of the Fallen. But a lot of it felt a little bit misplaced. Now, Sentinel Prime as a character, voiced by Leonard Nimoy, which was nice to have him back in the fandom, and was a good character and was a nice twist as well. Megatron felt completely forgettable, really up until the very end, and it just kind of petered out. It just kind of, you could tell that Sentinel was going to be the big bad in this one, and we've seen that again in other films. I'll get to that in a minute. It was a good film, but possibly on par with Revenge of the Fallen. Maybe slightly better. Do I want to put it up in A tier? I don't know. Possibly just B tier for me. By no means I hated it, but seeing more of the same, wasn't it? And it was finishing off a trilogy that didn't have a big crescendo to it. It was just a new villain to fight. But that, it was fine. That's all it was. It was fine. And that's why it's going B tier for me. Age of Extinction. I waned at this point. I was starting to not care about it as much. It felt... The Dinobots were cool to see on the screen and they were nice characters, but I felt they could have been done better. And we saw a grittier side to Optimus now. And again, the humans are there. But I kind of didn't care. I kind of didn't care about how is this film any different to the previous films. And I think this started to show a bit more in the box office as well. 2007 piqued a lot of interest and I think is still one of the highest grossing Transformers films to date. But every release after it just felt that little bit less exciting. What was it? Year and a half to 2 years between these films? We were doing quite well, but in terms of releases... But the films felt very cut and paste, very, we've seen this before, how does this differ? And I felt at times I couldn't tell which one I was watching. I had to kind of work it out. It was okay. I did like the grittiness. I did like seeing the Dinobots, but I'm putting this in C tier because at this point it just felt a bit of a cut and paste formula. And this is where I just lost a bit of interest in the films. And that's where I really lost interest in the films. The Last Night. Just hard work to watch. I'm sorry if you like it, great if you do. For me, I just didn't enjoy it. Seeing the likes of Anthony Hopkins, it just felt hard work. It promised something that I don't think it delivered on, and it tried to go very gritty. I like the introduction of the likes of Galvatron, but it just felt, again, like, what is the purpose of this film? What are we doing that's any different to its predecessors? And it felt tired, and it felt laboured, and for me, I'm putting that straight in the pit. And again, this is where I felt I just needed to kind of stop watching the films. I didn't feel they added too much for me. And a long time had passed, and we went into Bumblebee. Now, Bumblebee, I liked. Bumblebee I liked for a number of reasons. It felt fresh, albeit familiar. There was a load of G1 in this. There were so many G1 references, but it felt like it was still acknowledging the live action films. They looked familiar, very much looking like G1 at the same time. And it was directed by a different director, Travis Knight, who was himself a G1 fan. The opening 3-minute scene on Cybertron, we were crying out for it. You could have the live action movie designs, but have them on Cybertron in that guise. When Soundwave drops down, sounding like a G1 Soundwave, it's ticking all the boxes. But even so, when it gets to Earth, Charlie as a character, I really liked her. I felt humans were used just enough in this film to break it up, to have a human connection but not overkill. I never felt the humans were the biggest point of the story. This was really the bond between Bumblebee and Charlie. And having John Cena in there was cool, was nice, was fun. It was a very good film. I did enjoy it. Again, lovely little niche references. And for me, of the live action films in as much as cinematic sense, I'm putting that in Triple S. It's my favourite one. It's just one that I really did enjoy. I still do enjoy. And it's great to see Optimus Prime driving alongside in his truck mode. The only thing I would have liked, and I think there's a panel of this in, could have been IDW Comics or Dreamwave, I forget which, where you get like a hologram and it could be Peter Cullen driving Optimus Prime in an Earth-based truck. And I thought that would have been the icing on the cake, is in that final scene when Bumblebee and Optimus are in their alt modes driving across, I don't know, Golden Gate Bridge, something like that. And if you saw like a holographic driver, but it was actually Peter Cullen, that would be lovely. I love the film. I do enjoy the film. I still enjoy watching it to this day. It's a good standalone film as well. I don't feel it needs a sequel. It's just enjoyable for what it is. Rise of the Beasts. Okay, you'll know I'm a Beast Wars fan. I was so up and down for this. It was nice to get a film with the Beast Wars characters, but they looked cool. I did like how Primal looked. There felt machinist primal rage there, like tearing through. It wasn't the clean Beast Wars cartoon of an alt mode. It wasn't looking like an actual gorilla. It was a mechanical gorilla, mechanical silverback. Rhinox roaring was a good roar. Okay, where do you begin? Scourge wasn't a bad character, but I did find him an odd choice. When we have Megatron and you have Galvatron in previous films, Scourge was the next logical choice. Could we have had an Overlord? Could we have had a Darkwing? Could we have had... I don't know. Scourge felt like a funny choice, and his design was a little bit odd, but I did enjoy him nevertheless. I like the fact we saw Unicron. The fact that the Decepticons were only a team of 3 because they were powered up. They were to be heralds of Unicron. I understand they're infused with Unicron's goodness, but it just felt like an odd choice. But Battletrap was a cool looking character. The Maximals. Cheetor looked promising, didn't get enough screen time. Rhinox, to my understanding, doesn't get a speaking line. I think he maybe did, but it got cut from the film. Air Razor was a cool character, killed off too soon, spoilers. And yeah, Ron Perlman actually did a better job than I thought as Optimus Primal. I would have liked Gary Chalk and the actual original cast to come back and voice their characters, but they weren't prepared to do it for the Netflix series of War for Cybertron Kingdom, but they were trying to recreate a lot of the moments like the death of Coda Hero, of Dinobot. Then they weren't going to do it for the cinematics, but I thought Ron Perlman did an admirable job. Again, Optimus is feeling, this is Optimus Prime, is feeling very angry. He's soured. He doesn't trust the humans. I quite like Mirage in this. I thought Mirage was a cool character. It was a nice balance with Noah, but it didn't capture that same bonding element that Charlie and Bumblebee did. I felt that worked better. The only thing that I really didn't like about this film was it just felt very predictable. It felt a bit like human helps save the day. Optimus still wins the fight when you think he's been knocked down. You could argue that Transformers is always going to go that way in its storytelling. But yeah, it just felt a bit predictable for my eyes. And it was Beast Wars, so that was cool. But yeah, in some parts of it, like the artifacts and the other human character who was the scientist one, I didn't care enough to remember her name. It just felt very predictable. As much as I like some of the characters and some of the elements on it, do I put it down in A tier? I might put it down in B tier, just because it just felt a bit predictable. It was nice as it looked. It was a very good looking film. I thought the characters looked good. But I just didn't care for the storytelling. I thought it was very bland. And then we've had a long gap, and we're on to Transformers 1. Now, as you may have seen my video on this recently, I said this might be the best Transformers film made to date. A lot of you just seem to disagree with that, and a lot of people say it's not as good as 1986. You are allowed to like stuff other than the 1986 movie, by the way. I love the 1986 movie, but this was so fun, so good to enjoy. And it felt a bit different in as much as it was a full CGI film. It wasn't live action, it wasn't kind of, I don't want to say real world shot, but real world setting. It gave us a Cybertronian film that we've been crying out for. And everyone's saying, take the humans out of films. We didn't have any humans in this. It's such an enjoyable film. Again, a very heavy cast. The likes of Chris Hemsworth, the likes of Scarlett Johansson, Steve Buscemi, to name but a few. It's a lot to like here. Very respectful to the lore of Transformers. Very respectful for the history, showing Primus. And it's an origin story, but it's not detaching itself. It's not a reboot. It didn't feel like a reboot. I just enjoyed it so much for what it was. And I said again, the runtime was good. An hour 44. I think it just ticks a lot of boxes. So yeah, for me, going in good company, up in the S tier. Man, I just enjoyed that film. Those top three films, 1986, Bumblebee, and Transformers 1, I could watch those anytime and just enjoy it. The other films I could just take or leave, and it's not to say I don't like them. I just feel some of them have very ho-hum elements, just very predictable. Why do you enjoy it? But I do understand, if you grew up, anything from the 2000s onwards, if you grew up seeing these films for the first time and that was your introduction to Transformers, then I do understand why this is going to be your jam. This is why these are going to be your 1986 film. And I totally get that. All the power to you. From my perspective, I do enjoy them. But I feel those three that I've listed under S tier, they are the ones that I just really enjoy so much. And there we go. That is my ranking of the films. I'm sure you guys will have your own opinions. Do leave your comments in the descriptions below of your rankings, which one you enjoyed. But please do remember to be kind to others in the comments. If you didn't like a film that someone else likes, hey, that's okay. What other films are we going to get? Will there be more films? I'd like to think there will be. Nothing's in the pipeline as of yet, but we'll see how things go. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and hit that subscribe button because I will see you on the next one.